Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Shri Krishna Niti, a talk by Kushagra Aniket, organized by Hindu Yuva, a student chapter of IIT, in collaboration with Indica USA. I am Ruta Bengaluru. I am honored to be your host for today. I am especially excited to welcome all of you who are new to our event. I hope you will find this to be valuable experience. Before we get started, I would like to give a brief introduction about Hindu Yuva. Hindu Yuva is a student chapter officially registered on campus. It aims to provide a platform to preserve, practice, promote, and protect Hindu Dharma by bringing together Hindu youth at IIT. Yuva in Hindu Yuva stands for Youth, Unity, Virtues, and Action. Hindu Yuva is also a national organization and has chapters all over USA encompassing more than 60 universities. Now I would like to give a brief introduction about Avadhans Kumar, who will be talking more about Indica shortly. Avadhans Kumar, a columnist and linguistic and a trustee of Indica, non-profit organization in the US. Avadhans originally from Patna, Bihar, and he is an alumnus of both Jawaharlal Nehru University and University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. He has taught linguistics and Hindi as a foreign language, respectively, and he has also published several Hindi poems. Avadhans received the San Francisco Press Club Journalistic Excellence Award in the year 2021 and 2022. So let's welcome Avadhans Kumar to learn more about Indica.
Thank you, Vanita, and it's a real pleasure to be here in front of you young guys. It reminds me of my days as a student. So I will not take much time. I'll just quickly want to talk about what we do as Indica. So we are pursuing, we are a non-traditional university for traditional knowledge. We seek to build a global renaissance based on Indic civilizational thought. We are pursuing multidimensional strategy across time, space, and cause by establishing centers of excellence, transforming intellectuals, and building an ecosystem. We offer grants and scholarships for individuals in pursuit of spread of Indic knowledge. We build partnerships and alliances with universities, schools, colleges, research institutions, NGOs, media, etc. We have several platforms that promote and deliver Indic content, services, and experiences. We conduct offline and online courses. We guide research on select topics through our fellowship programs. We publish books by academics and public intellectuals across all genres. We conduct events such as this one, conferences, seminars, workshops, and talks through our growing global network. You can find us on social media where we are at Indic Academy, and website is indicacademy.org. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Now I would like to introduce Kushagra Aniket, an economic and management consultant based in New York, USA. Kushagra graduated from Cornell University as a Tata Scholar with degrees in economics, mathematics, and statistics. He completed an MBA in finance with Dean's Honor from Columbia University in New York. Kushagra has received multiple awards in both India and US for his writings in poetry as well as prose that span 3 languages such as English, Hindi, and Sanskrit. He is also a Sangeet Visharat in Hindustani vocal music. Kushagra is a scholar in residence with Indica Classical Library, and he has also written a book. And the summary of the book I am reading. How often have you advised to follow the teachings of Krishna, but wonder what those teachings were? Krishna Niti, timeless strategic wisdom, brings forth 10 of the most important lessons delivered by Krishna at critical junctures of the Mahabharata, whether negotiating for peace between the Kauravas and Pandavas, resolving internal conflicts in Pandava camp, or inspiring Yudhishthira to rule as a Dharmaraja. At the end of Kuruskshetra war, Krishna emerges as a strategist par excellence who enlightened. His practical instruction in Niti cover a wide range of subjects such as strategy, ethics, polity, and above all, Dharma. The author is Kushagra Aniket and Nityanand Mishra draw upon their extensive research into Mahabharata to present from the magnificent Itihasa of India. So let's welcome Kushagra Aniket to get enlightened and insightful information about Krishna.
Thank you everyone. Thank you Yugaji and Afshan Steve. Thank you for having me. Is the mic working? Yes. Okay. We can start with the Mangala Sharan, which is on the next slide, I believe. Yeah, this is the Mangala Sharan of a book. So as you know, for any traditional work that we have in Sanatana Dharma, we always start with the Mangala Sharan, which is a benedictory verse that is composed in honor of the subject or of the devata of that book. So this is the Mangala Charan that I had composed for this upcoming book, Shri Krishna Niti. I'll just read it. It actually summarizes the critical actions taken by Krishna throughout his life in the Mahabharata. So, Vishwam Modayate Yadum Sukhayate Gopih Samashlishyate Kamsam Hamsayate Ramam Ramayate Dvaravatim Vibrate दौत्यं पालयते रमां रमयते रणं रणयते स्वात्मानमातन्वते पार्थान् बोधयते दशोद्यमकृते कृष्णाय तुभ्यं नमः. So it summarizes the life of Krishna in 10 actions, and this format is inspired by the Gita Govind of Jayadeva. So first of all, he delights the entire world. He gives happiness, he gives joys to his clan of the Yadus. He embraces the gopis, he destroys Kansa, he causes joy to Rama or Rukmini, he rules over Dwaraka, he also takes upon the role of a messenger to the Kaurava court, which is Datyam Palayate. He thunders on the battlefield of Kuruskshetra, and in that course he also displays his universal form. And throughout the epic, Parthan Bodhayate, at various junctures, he gives enlightenment, he gives guidance and advice to the different sons of Pritha, Kunti, including Arjuna, and we meditate on these 10 actions of Krishna. So this is the Mangala Sharan of this book. Now, I can begin with a brief introduction into this book, what this book is about. The genesis of this book actually goes back to some of my readings in the Mahabharata. As you know, the Mahabharata is a massive epic, maybe more than 2,000 to 3,000 years old, and it has more than 100,000 shlokas. Uh, Throughout these shlokas, there are various knowledge systems, various practical advice, spiritual guidance, and a glimpse into the polity and the society of the time that this epic was composed in. And from this epic, while reading it line by line over several years, I was able to extract around 300 verses, which were spoken by Krishna at different points in the epic. These are beyond the verses that we have in the Bhagavad Gita. So as you know, the Bhagavad Gita is almost treated as a standalone text with around 700 verses in it. given directly to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kuruskshetra. But that is not the entirety of Krishna's practical advice, Krishna's spiritual guidance given in the book. In fact, at different junctures in the epic, he has intervened, he has provided guidance, he has resolved disputes and conflicts, and that was the side of Krishna that we wanted to bring out in this book. So my co-author, Nityanand Mishra, whom some of you might know, he has several other books to his credit. So the two of us went on this project, extracted this content from the epic, and then presented it in the form of 10 to 11 stories. The book is actually expected to be released a little bit later this year. We are targeting Gita Jayanti, which I think is on December 22nd this year. So stay tuned for that. Was expecting to have the book available for pre-order today, but there are some delays nonetheless. When the book is actually released, we will make sure that everyone is informed. Today, the purpose of this talk is actually to give you a flavor of this book, just a brief glimpse into some of the ideas contained in this book. We may not be able to go through all the chapters, but maybe 4 or 5 of them we can have a discussion. And I want to make it very interactive, so at any point if you have any questions, feel free to jump in, because I'm sure everyone has read the Mahabharata, heard the stories in different formats, maybe even seen some of the remakes that have been made. And alongside, we will also have a little pop quiz to see if how in tune are you with some of the hidden stories that are contained in the Mahabharata. So maybe we begin with the first pop question. Yeah, so this is an interesting question. As you know, the Mahabharata is its own text. The Bhagavad Purana, which is another text, deals with the childhood and the youth of Shri Krishna. So according to the Mahabharata, what is the first point of Krishna's entry into the story? And the 4 options are Yudhishthira's Rajasuya Yajna, the game of rice, which is in the Sabha Parva, the exile of the Pandavas, and finally the Swayamvara of Draupadi. So if you can scan the QR code or even go to this website and provide your answers, have you opened it for a minute? Okay. Looks like everyone is done. Freeze it. The plurality is correct. It is indeed Draupadi Swayamvara. He has a very short role there. He tells Balaram that the 5 Brahmins that you see in the audience are none other than the 5 Pandavas. And in fact, he also follows Arjuna and Draupadi to the Pandava camp, and there Yudhishthira asks him as to how he discovered who they were. So he has a very nice saying there that just as fire cannot be hidden, similarly the Pandavas can also not be hidden. And he departs soon thereafter, after resolving the matter of the marriage of Draupadi to the 5 princes. He says that just as fire keeps on increasing when put into a haystack, similarly may the Pandavas keep growing. So that is the first point of entry. Of course, no great Niti advice there, but just to set the context, that's the first point at which Krishna does enter the Mahabharata story. Let's put the second quiz question, and then we will go to the first chapter. This should be relatively easy. I think everyone is familiar with this one. When Yudhishthira decided to perform the Rajasuya Yajna, there was one last holdout king who had to be defeated before he could proceed with the ceremony. Who was that king? The options are Shalva, Jarasandha, Duryodhana, and Bhagadava. Okay, you see the results? More than 70% is actually correct here. It was Jarasandha. Most other kings and princes of India were willing to accept the supremacy of Yudhishthira, except for Jarasandha. And at that time, Jarasandha had actually captured, I think, around 90 kings whom he wanted to sacrifice to Rudradev and thereby attain the title of Emperor of India. So the story is, and we can go to the first chapter thereafter. So the first chapter is about this incident, Shatru Nigraha, or restraining the enemy. The story is that Narada, Devarshi Narada, he had come to visit Yudhishthira, and he inquired about the well-being of his subjects across all communities, across all classes of society. He inquired about the peacefulness of his kingdom, whether his justice was fair to everyone, and Yudhishthira ultimately answered in the affirmative to all of them. So it did prove that Yudhishthira was doing a good job at governing the kingdom. And then Narada planted this idea that if you are such a good ruler, then you should consider whether you want to perform the Rajasuya Yajna and actually become the emperor of India. This idea actually then took root in Yudhishthira's mind and he started planning for it. But then, as was his nature, on some occasions he started becoming indecisive when he found out that the biggest holdout was Jarasandha, who was very powerful and was very difficult to defeat. And then in fact he also said, what is to be gained from this violence? Why do we have to go and conquer him? And then Krishna actually was present in Indraprastha at that time, and he provided guidance and advice to him, saying that, you see, if you are not the one pursuing emperorship, being the Dharmaraja, being a righteous ruler, then someone else will. Someone else will come and replace you, and that is exactly the intention of Jarasandha. So if you think that you have it in you, you have the caliber to provide good governance, you have the caliber to rule as a just ruler, then you should pursue the title of an emperor and not allow an unjust person to actually take it. And then, for example, he says that there are 4 ways in which you can become an emperor. The first is by defeating your enemies. The second is by governing well or through good governance. The third is through dana, by providing donations or charity or philanthropy to a lot of people. And the fifth and the fourth is through good behavior, so being fair and just to everyone. And he says in the past there have been kings who have aspired to become emperors through one of these means. Either they were very brave and powerful and they defeated all their enemies, or they were so pacified and very good to their people that people liked them and they won the popular approval, and therefore they acquired the title of an emperor. But Krishna says to actually become the emperor, you must aspire to fulfill all these 4 goals. So you should not only defeat your enemies, but you should also govern your kingdom well. And therefore, you have already managed to demonstrate your mettle on the last 3 parameters. The only thing left for you is to defeat your remaining enemies, and that is how he motivates Yudhishthira to enter into a conflict with Jarasandha. Even in that, there is a debate that, okay, if we are going to take an army and attack Magadha, which was actually the kingdom ruled by Jarasandha, then there will be a lot of bloodshed and violence, and we don't want that. So is there a shorter way, or is there a more peaceful way of securing that? And that is when Krishna advises him that you don't have to take your entire army, just Bhima, Arjuna, and myself. These three people are sufficient. We will travel in disguise to Magadha, and we will ensure that Jarasandha is defeated on your behalf. So the three people then go to Magadha. When they reach there, they actually enter the kingdom in disguise. So they are disguised as young brahmanas who have just completed their education. So it's called Snataka Brahmana. And they enter the kingdom at night. They desire to meet the king. Jarasandha had this pledge that he gave as much donation, as much dan as anyone asked. So they made their wishes known, and they asked for the dan of Yuddha, Malla Yuddha, which is hand-to-hand combat. And Jarasandha actually asks them as to why they had entered the kingdom in this disguised format. And Krishna says actually a very nice verse there. I'll just read it here. He says, Advarena ripor geham dvarena suhrido grihan pravishanti naradhira dvaran nitani dharmatah. You must always enter your friend's home through the right door, but you must always enter your enemy's home through the back door, Advara. Because there is no reason to enter your enemy's camp through the front. You will get attacked if you do that. And this is exactly what is also followed in a different yuga by Hanuman. And I compared this to the Valmiki Ramayana. Hanuman actually says that I will enter Lanka not through the front door but through the Advar, which is a back door or a window entrance or some side entrance. So he says, Advarena cha Mahabahu Prakaram Abhipukluve Pravishya Nagarim Lankam Kaviraj Hitankara. So this is an interesting piece of advice that he gives, and uses that to justify the fact that you should enter your enemy in a disguised format. And then the battle takes place for several days, and of course the two parties here, Jarasandha and Bhima, were evenly balanced, so there was no end in sight. And as you might know, the story is that he then picked up a straw of grass or a blade of grass, broke it into two pieces, and then disposed it in two different directions. The reason being that Jarasandha had this boon that whoever broke him into two pieces and kept it side by side, the body would then reunite and he would not be harmed. So at that point, actually, Krishna also says another interesting verse. It's sort of sarcastic. I will also read it here. This is how he tries to give the signal to him without actually being very obvious what he's doing. He says, Klantah shatrurna kaunteya labhyah pidayatum rane pidamano hi kartena jayaj jivitatmanah. He says, Oh Bhim, see, this enemy is highly fatigued, and a fatigued enemy should not be fought against. So you can interpret it to mean that he advised him to cease fighting, but actually what he meant was finish this battle. You must end this enemy now. Then he does his signal, and that is how Jarasandha is killed. When Jarasandha was killed, all his captives were then released. The 90 kings who he had in his prisons, and Jarasandha's son actually became the ruler of Magadha. So that is how he advised and also secured the restraint of Yudhishthira's enemies and paved the way for his Rajasuya. Let's now move to the third question. slightly premature, but let's have this one. So, as you know, later in the story of Mahabharata, we have different parties sending messengers to each other. So, who was the first messenger sent in this exchange? Okay, shall we freeze? No, this is not correct. Because why would you take out your biggest cannons at the very beginning of a negotiation, right? You keep your greatest negotiator for the last stage. So Satyaki is also not correct. Satyaki is the second option that people have chosen. So Satyaki was actually the one who was very much pro-battle. He wanted the Pandavas to take revenge. He was convinced that Yudhishthira had been treated unfairly, Draupadi had been treated miserably, and in fact, in front of everyone, he even countered or argued against Balaramji, saying that why are you talking about peace when this is the right time to extract revenge from the Kauravas. So Satyaki was obviously not the right choice here to send as a negotiator. It was actually Draupada's Raj Purohit was first sent because he was seen as an unbiased person who did not have anything in this conflict and was also seen as a learned person who could go and negotiate for peace. So this actually tells you how to open a negotiation, right? If you send your big guns in the very first round, they may come and in fact secure a worse outcome that you would have even intended. So that's why Drupada's Raj Purohit was sent as the first person. Let's go back. Let's go back to yeah. So I will just skip over a few of these chapters very briefly and then move to this interesting topic of negotiation between Kauravas and Pandavas. So in the next chapter that I have, Apat Vivek, this is after Draupadi Chirharan, after the exiling of the Pandavas. So they are all in the forest. And this is the second time Krishna actually makes an entry here. He visits the Pandavas in the forest and pleads that he could not come because he was busy fighting some other enemy who had attacked Dwarka. And this is the place where he tries to very calmly analyze what were the causes of this debacle, of this exile. And that is where there is a very famous verse by him where he condemns gambling and some other vices. Let me just read it here. Yeah, he says, Striyoksha mrigayapanam kama samuthitam dukkham chatushayam proktam yay naro bhashyate shriyah tatra sarvatra vaktavyam manyante shastra kovida visheshatascha vaktavyam dyute pashyanti tadvida. He says that that addiction to lust, gambling, hunting, and drinking, these are the four evils which cause the downfall of even great kings, and therefore those who are well versed in the Shastras have advised that all of these four should be abandoned. And this actually then is picked up by the later Nitikaras such as Chanakya, etc., who have then reiterated and quoted this verse. Then he says, out of these, gambling is the worst of all because ekaha dravyanashotra dhruvam vyasanamevacha abhuktanashasharthanam va parushyam cha kevalam. He says the others actually take more time to show their ill effects, right? Hunting, etc. If you are really addicted to it, then it can cause a problem in the long run. But gambling shows its actual ill effects in a single day. So that is why it is specially condemned by people who are well versed in the Shastras. But then after providing this guidance, he still says that nonetheless, I know that the Pandavas were on the righteous side. They were not the ones who were cheating in this. And he gives them solace and says that Dharma Nityastu ekechin nade siddhanti karnichit. Those who remain steadfast on Dharma, they do not suffer in the long run. There may be a short period of time when they may be seen to be suffering, but in the long run, they do not attain sorrow. So this is the second chapter. This is the second piece of Krishna's intervention. Then the third one, that is the one which we were actually discussing in the pop quiz. It is about Dharma Sangrama, or the case for Kuruskshetra. After the exile is over, the Pandavas and Kauravas start negotiating, and in this process, there are several messengers who are exchanged. The first messenger, as I mentioned, was Drupada's Raj Purohit, because he was a relatively impartial party who could argue for peace on both sides. Second messenger, which was sent in response to the Pandavas' messenger, was Sanjay. And do you know who Sanjay was? Does anyone know?
Yes. He was one of the brothers of Dhritarashtra. The one who used to tell about the things.
That was Vidur. You are thinking about Vidur.
Sanjay is the narrator of
Bhagavad Gita, yes.
Rama.
Yes. But what was his
He was a charioteer.
occupation?
He was a charioteer of Dhritarashtra.
Exactly. He was the charioteer of Dhritarashtra. And in those days, actually, charioteers were highly trusted people, because you trust your vehicle in that person's hands, so you could also trust other things, and they were generally very well versed and educated. So Sanjay was chosen as the messenger of the Kauravas to go to the Pandava camp. So Sanjay goes there, and what he says is actually very interestingly described by Krishna as Vakyajal. He throws a net of words. First he says, I understand that Pandavas are the wrong party here. I understand that you have suffered a lot of hardships over the last 13 years. I understand that you want your kingdom back, but see, Duryodhana is not willing to accept your demands, and therefore the only option is to fight in a war. And you, Yudhishthira, you are the Dharmaraja, so you should know that violence is never a good option. So stay where you are, stay peacefully. Do not antagonize Duryodhana even further, and let there be no war. This is essentially the message of Sanjaya in so many words, that we know what you have gone through, but we cannot do anything about it. That is where Krishna actually is full of rage, and he gives his response to Sanjay, and that is what I am calling the case for Kuruskshetra. There is a theory in international relations for a long period of time called the just war theory. It is, what are the circumstances in which you can actually justify raising arms? What are the circumstances in which you can say that a war which is being fought is a just war? So he makes an argument for fighting in Kurukshetra. And he says there are a few interesting verses here. Let me go through them quickly. Yeah, so first of all, Krishna says that it is the Kshatriya Dharma of Pandavas to win back what is their rightful inheritance, what is their rightful share, but more importantly, to actually govern a kingdom. Right? They were governing the kingdom of Indraprastha, which was their ancestral duty, and they cannot simply abandon that duty because you have usurped their kingdom. So that is the first argument that he makes, and then he compares the Kauravas to Taskaras, meaning robbers or smugglers. He says that ते चेत् पित्रे कर्मणि वर्तमाना आपद्येरन्दिष्टवशेन मृत्युं यथा शक्त्या पूरयन्तः स्वकर्म तदप्येषां निधनं स्यात् प्रशस्तम्. He says that fighting against the Kauravas, even if that leads to death, uh, will be respected, because the Pandavas would be discharging their ancestral duties as Kshatriyas. And then he goes on to say, यदा गृध्येत् परभूतो निशंसो विधिप्रकोपात् बलमाददानः ततो राज्ञां भवति युद्धमेतत् तत्र जातं वर्मशस्त्रं धनुश्च इन्द्रेणैतत् तस्य वधाय कर्म उत्पादितं वर्मशस्त्रं धनुश्च. He says that the root of all conflict is when a king starts to hanker after the properties or the kingdom of another ruler. And that is when the battle between kings happens. In fact, Indra, or God himself, has created weapons for that very moment. When your properties are being usurped, when your rights are being infringed, that is when you are justified in raising arms. He then goes on to say, Steno haret yatra dhanam yadrishta prasiyava yatra haret drishta ubhau garhyo bhavata sanjayeto kim vai tatakam dhritarashtasya. He says, whether your wealth is stolen in a hidden way or whether it is stolen in front of everyone, both of these cases are highly condemned. And what is the difference between the sons of Dhritarashtra and a common thief in that case? And therefore he lays the blame squarely on the shoulders of Duryodhana and says that the Pandavas are justified in reclaiming their kingdom. There is a very famous verse that also occurs here. Suyodhano manyumayo mahadimah skandah karnah shakunistasya shakha dushyasanah pushpaphale samriddhe moolam raja dhritarashtra manishi. Duryodhana is like a great tree, Manyumayo Mahadama. It's a great tree of anger, right? What is the trunk of this tree? The trunk of this tree is Karna. Karna is the one who is always fanning the flames of Duryodhana's anger. Shakunis tasya shakha. Shakuni is nothing but the branch of this tree. Dushasana pushpa phale samriddhe. Dushasana is the flower and fruit of this tree. But the root of this tree, Moolam Raja Dhritarashtra Manishi, the root of this tree is his father himself, Dhritarashtra. He is the one who is always accommodating, who is always bowing down to Duryodhana's wishes, and that is how he has planted this tree of anger. In contrast, the Pandavas are very different. For example, he says, Yudhishthiro Dharmamayo Mahatma. Yudhishthira is actually a tree of Dharma. Skandorjuno Bhimasenosya Shakha, whose trunk is Arjuna and whose branches are Bhim. Matri Putro Pushpa Phale Samriddhe, the two sons of Matri, Nakul and Sahadev, are like its flowers and fruits. Moolam Tuham Brahmacha Brahmanasha, and its root is nothing but I myself, Krishna. So this is the difference between the two camps. And finally he concludes by comparing the Pandavas to a tiger and Dhritarashtra to a forest. He says, Nirvano vadyate vyagro nirvyagram chidyate vanam tasmat vyagro vanam rakshet vanam vyagram chapalaye. He says that a forest without a tiger gets destroyed. These people come in and cut down the forest. Similarly, a tiger outside a forest also gets attacked, also gets destroyed. Therefore, it's the duty or it's the nature of the Vyagra, of the tiger, to protect the forest, and it is the nature of the forest to protect the tiger. This actually is a very popular verse. I think it's also the government of India's motto for Save Tiger campaign. But this is the interesting context in which it is said that the two of them are in a relationship of anyonyashraya. Either party is a refuge or provides shelter to the other party, and they have this interdependent relationship. So after this, there is a response to Sanjaya. Sanjaya returns to Dhritarashtra's camp, to the Kaurava court, and that is where the famous story of the Vidur Niti is actually told. He visits Dhritarashtra at night. It's almost night, and he says that I have news from the Pandava camp. It's not very good news, and therefore I advise you to return the kingdom of Yudhishthira back to him. Dhritarashtra does not like it. He dismisses Sanjay, says that come back tomorrow morning and convey your message to the entire assembly. So he goes. But Dhritarashtra, of course, is then restless as to what Sanjay might say in the morning. So he could not sleep, and therefore he summons Vidura. Vidura was his minister. He could be summoned at any time at night. So Vidura goes to him, and then in fact Vidura asks him that what is causing your insomnia? What is the reason for insomnia? Among kings, I know of only a few reasons for insomnia. One of them is relying on bad ministers. And then he says, you have three ministers that you have trusted your entire kingdom with. The first is Karna, the second is Duryodhana, and the third is Shakun. And after trusting your entire kingdom in the hands of these three, tell me, O king, can you sleep in peace? Can you ever hope to find peace after appointing such ministers to the great responsibilities of your kingdom? So that is a whole separate story. It is not in my book. Yes, please.
Is that where the Vidur Niti gets discussed?
Yes. And then the entire night, Vidur actually gives him a sermon into Vidur Niti. That is actually one of the key differences between Krishna Niti and Vidur Niti or other forms of Niti. Vidur Niti is given to Dhritarashtra, and Dhritarashtra keeps asking that Vidur, I have more questions. Can you satisfy my curiosity throughout the night? But it's never implemented. What Vidur advises Dhritarashtra to do is never followed by Dhritarashtra. That's actually the major difference between Krishna Niti and Vidur Niti. Krishna Niti is actually practiced and implemented by the Pandavas, for example. So we saw how Yudhishthira, when he followed this, he was able to perform his Rajasuya Yajna, and then later on we have several other examples. And those who did not follow Krishna Niti, for example, Duryodhana, we know what happened to them. So that is why we have a clear example of a policy advice or a moral advice being implemented in practice. So that is the story of Dharma Sangram, and then they start preparing for war. So the order of these chapters is also very interesting. It follows the order of the Mahabharata by Vyas. Ranotyog actually comes before Shanti Dotya, which means that you start preparing for war first before you start entering into a peace negotiation. Right? If you're completely unprepared, and if the war happens tomorrow or a week from now, you will not be able to respond in kind. So they start preparing for the war, they start assembling all their allies, and then the famous story of Duryodhana going to Krishna, and Arjuna was also there, and then Arjuna asks for Krishna himself while Duryodhana gets the Narayana Sena. All that happens in this period. So you first start preparing for war, and then you start thinking about how to fight for peace. So let's go to another top question. I think a few of them we can cover now and then move on. Yeah. So, as we know, Krishna, the famous Shanti Dut of the Mahabharata, when he goes and travels to the Kaurava court, where does he decide to stay? At Kunti's residence, at Bhishma's residence, at Dushasana's residence, or at Vidura's place? This should be very easy for everyone. Okay, can you please? Yeah, but still, I mean, almost half. Nonetheless, yeah, Vidur is the correct one here, because he had longed to get Krishna to visit his place, and Krishna knew about it. You can read more about it in the Srimad Bhagavatam actually. It doesn't go into a great detail here in the Mahabharata. Before that, so when Krishna actually arrives at the Kaurava court, before that there is planning going on as to how to give a proper welcome to Krishna. And then Dhritarashtra calls his entire assembly, and Vidur is sitting there, and Duryodhana is there, and Bhishma is there. Various kings and ministers are sitting, and he says he gives a long list of gifts that he wants to give to Krishna. He says, I will give him enough gold and all sorts of gems, ratnas, and all sorts of things of the kingdom itself. And he gives a long list. In response to that, Vidura actually starts laughing. He says that you can give whatever you want, and of course, Krishna deserves to get everything that you have to give him. But know that he will not take any of it. He says that beyond your good wishes and water, he will not accept anything else from you. And at that juncture, Duryodhana actually says that for the first time I agree with Vidur, do not give anything to Krishna. In fact, I have a better plan. Why don't we plan and try to arrest and capture Krishna when he is here? So he then starts plotting with Karna and Dushasana as to how he could arrest Krishna. Listening to this, Bhishma gets furious, and he says that if you have decided to invite your death, then go ahead and carry out this plan, but I cannot be a party to it, and he just storms out of the assembly room. So all this happens in the background. Yes, please.
Is there a significance of where he's
At Vidura's place, right?
Yeah.
Because he was a great bhakta of Krishna. And in fact, before that, there is a very interesting verse that happens. When Krishna arrives, Duryodhana is trying to be very welcoming towards him, and he says, please join me for some lunch. And you know what Krishna says there? He declines the invite, of course, and he says, Sampriti bhojyanyannani apat bhojyani vapunah naja sampriyase rajan naja evapat gatavaya. He says there are only two scenarios in which you should accept a lunch invitation or a food invitation, which is either you have great affection for the person who has invited you, or you are in trouble. So in either of those two situations, you should accept it. And he says, however, at present, O Duryodhana, neither you are affectionate towards us, nor are we in any distress. So I will have to politely decline your invitation. In fact, Krishna does not wait for much longer to have this negotiation start, and he starts to place the blame solely on the shoulders of Duryodhana. I will go through a few of these verses which are interesting here. Bef- He says, in fact, he then blames Karna and Dushasana for not stopping Duryodhana on this course of ruin. He says, Akesha Prahanan Mitra Makaryat Sannivartayan Avachya Kasyachit Bhavati Kritayatno Yathabalam. He says, you should strive to your greatest extent to prevent your friend from falling into bad ways. If that extends to the extent of seizing him by the hair, you should even do that. But you should not let him do an improper act. And then he says, Gyati nam hi mitho bhede yan mitram navipadyate sarvayatnena madhyastam natan mitram vidurbudha. A friend who does not do that, who does not intercede when there are dissensions between a family, is not regarded as a friend by the wise. And then after this, Krishna goes to the Kaurava court and then starts his great argument as to why this war should not take place. And as we all know, previously the same court, when Draupadi was being insulted in front of everyone, the same court was simply mute, acting like mute spectators. And Krishna actually reminds of that incident and says, Yatra dharmo yadharmena satyam yatra nitena cha hanyate prekshamananam hatastatra sapasada. He says, in the assembly where in front of everyone, in front of all the onlookers, if dharma gets overpowered by adharma or truth by falsehood, you should know that everyone in this assembly is destined to die. He's very clear about that, and then in fact he goes on and says, Vidho dharmo yadharmena sabham yatra prapadyate na chasya shalyam krintanti vidhastatra sabhasada. He says, in an assembly, if the body of dharma is pierced by the arrow of adharma, you should know that the arrow is actually piercing the individual members of this assembly. So he in fact foretells what is going to happen on the battlefield of Kuruskshetra, and in fact everyone in that audience, except for maybe Dhritarashtra, actually meets their end in the battlefield. Let's do a couple of popular questions. So we know about the Bhagavad Gita, for example, very famous. But there are several other Gitas narrated by Krishna in the Mahabharata. So what are they? And how many in fact are there? Okay. Oh, but I told everyone that there are more than one. There are actually chosen two, right? So depending on the edition of the Mahabharata that you have, as we know that there are some differences between the northern and the southern editions, there could be anywhere between 3 to 4 Gitas that are narrated by Krishna. Anyone knows the names of some of these? One. So the first one we know is the Bhagavad Gita.
The second one, I don't remember the name, but he narrates to Arjun once again.
Yes.
Much later.
Yes.
During the Rajsuya, I think. I forgot the
No,
name.
much after the war.
Right, much after the war, sorry.
Yes.
Vaishampaya narrates it to, Parikshit narrates it, right? No.
Parikshit is not yet a character in Mahabharata.
No, the first narration happens there when he is doing the Sarpayagna or something.
But that is the narration of the Mahabharata itself. I'm talking about the Gita within the Mahabharata. So the first one is the Bhagavad Gita. The second one, as you rightly pointed, is called the Anu Gita or the Uttara Gita, which means the post Gita. So what happens is after the war, when Yudhishthira is crowned, Arjun goes to Shri Krishna and says that you gave me that wonderful sermon on the battlefield, but in the whole rough and tumble of the war, I forgot everything that you said. So can you please repeat it for me? And Krishna is sort of angry with Arjuna and says that, oh, that was the one moment in which I was actually present in Brahma Siddhi. I gave you the sermon commanding my entire knowledge, in fact. So it is not possible for me to repeat it again. But I will tell you a few stories which will give you the same message overall. So he tells him a series of stories, and those stories actually form the Anu Gita or the Uttara Gita. So that's the second one. What is the third one?
He narrates it to his friend Uttama.
That is in the Srimad Bhagavatam. That's why in the polling question I had stated that only the Mahabharata. Yes, that is true, but in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Uddhava actually goes to Krishna and says that we have heard that you gave a great sermon to Arjuna, why have you denied it to us? So please also give us the same thing. But we are not counting that, so anyone knows the third one? It is given to Yudhishthira. Actually, the last two are both given to Yudhishthira. So So the third one is called the Kama Gita. In that, the story is, and we will actually come to it in a little while, the story is that Yudhishthira, after the war, he doesn't want any part of the kingdom, he wants to go to the forest, he is full of guilt, and he says, I will renounce everything, and this desire for war, or this desire for kingdom, is actually responsible for the massacre of all my brothers and kinsmen. And in response to that, Krishna narrates the Kama Gita, in which the narrator is actually Kama himself, Kamadeva himself. And it's a very short, I think 10 or 12 verses, very sarcastic verses, in which Kama says that if you try to kill me by running away to the forest, or if you try to kill me by pursuing spiritual knowledge, I will not leave you. In fact, I will enter the same desire. I will enter the desire to attain knowledge. I will enter your ego associated with performance of tapasya. In fact, he says, he goes on to say that even mumuksha, the desire for salvation or liberation, is also a form of kama. So you cannot run away from it, even if you go to the forest. So that's a very ironic type of a Gita that is there in the Mahabharata. And the last one is called the Vaishnava Gita. It's mostly present in the southern edition of the Mahabharata, which is after all of the conflict is over and Yudhishthira is crowned, Yudhishthira then asks Krishna for advice on how to govern and how to rule the kingdom. And it covers a wide variety of topics, including governance, but also general good conduct and behavior towards elders, towards the sages, towards wise people, and so on. So these are the 4 Gitas that are present in the Mahabharata, just from Krishna. There are other Gitas as well. So the Bhagavad Gita, the Anu Gita or the Uttar Gita, the Kam Gita, and the Vaishnava Dharma Gita.
Does he also repeat the yoga part of it?
In the Anu Gita, yes, and in the Uddhav Gita as well. That is in Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, so now there are a few different scenarios that happen in the Mahabharata war. I will skip over some of them very briefly. One of them, as we all know, is the killing of Dronacharya. So you know the story. Can anyone narrate the story here? How Dronacharya was actually killed?
Killed by two others.
Drishtadyumna, yes. But how did they plot to kill him? Yeah. But what is the story?
The story is that the Ashwatham elephant is killed.
Yeah.
But they say that his son is on science.
Sent by Yudhishthira because he will not believe anybody else.
Oh, his death, only he can wish his death.
That is Bhishma.
Oh, sorry.
No. Ashwathama was almost undefeatable. No one could defeat him. No one could kill him. But Drishtadyumna had this boon that he was born to kill not Ashwathama. Drona was undefeatable, and Drishtadyumna had this boon to kill Drona. The way he was killed was, and there is an argument that Krishna makes there, in fact, that if you know that you are fighting for a just cause, and there is no other way to overcome the other party except to resort to some sort of injustice, then even that injustice becomes a form of dharma. That is his famous argument there. And then, as we know, Ashwathama was the name of his son, but also an elephant in the Pandava army. So Bhim goes and kills Ashwathama the elephant and then declares everywhere that I have killed Ashwathama. When Drona hears this, he is full of grief, and he starts to fall down, starts to give up his weapons. But then before doing that, he has a little bit of suspicion, because Ashwathama actually had the boon of immortality. So he goes to Yudhishthira and says, is it true that my son, that Ashwathama has been killed, not my son? Is it true that Ashwathama has been killed? And for some reason, there is a little bit of a gap there in the Mahabharata. Then Yudhishthira actually has a discussion with Krishna on the side as to how he should reply. But he then replies, he gets convinced by what Krishna has to say, and replies, yes, it is true that Ashwathama has been killed, but then the famous verse is Ashwathama Hateti Narova Kunjarova. But it may be a man, it may be an elephant. I do not know that.
Also, there was
And then people say that people also created noise or Krishna blows the couch and he could not hear it. And then Drona gives up his weapons and Drishadumna jumps from his chariot and beheads Drona. So that's the way Drona gets killed. And the argument, as I was mentioning, is that if you have to resort to a little dharma in defense of dharma, then that dharma becomes dharma and not vice versa. The same kind of moral dilemma comes a little bit later as well. One story I will quickly mention here. So, after the death of Drona, who becomes the commander-in-chief of the Kaurava army?
Karna.
Yes. And Karna, as we know, was the great enemy of Arjuna. So until this point, of course, Bhishma was killed with the assistance of Shikhandi, and Drona was killed through this mechanism as we were discussing. But everyone relied on Arjuna to kill Karna and deliver that victory to Yudhishthira. So once the next day of battle, Yudhishthira was attacked by Karna and he fled the battlefield after a while because he was completely wounded, and it says that he also fell down, he was dizzy and not feeling well, of course. So he goes to the Kauravas, to the Pandava camp. He retreats to the Pandava camp and hoping that his other brothers will continue fighting, right? So Bhima is there, Arjuna is there. Arjun discusses with Bhim that where did Yudhishthira go? And Bhim says, I do not know, but it seems like he has gone towards the camp. So, of course, protection of Yudhishthira and knowing where he's actually present is very important, because if he is killed or if he is captured, then the war is over. So Arjuna goes to the Pandava camp looking for Yudhishthira. And Yudhishthira at this moment is completely wounded, he is not himself. And as soon as Arjuna enters, Yudhishthira thinks that he has already killed Karna. That is why he is rushing to convey the good news. And he says, "Oh, have you killed Karna? That is such great news." And Arjuna says, "No, I have not killed him. I am actually here to inquire about your well-being." And then Yudhishthira suddenly becomes very angry, very uncharacteristic of himself. But he's probably very wounded. That's why he's very angry. He says, "Oh, you have one task that you have to do, and you cannot even deliver that properly. Shame on you. Why don't you renounce the battlefield? Why don't you give up your Gandiva bow and quit the battle?" Hearing this, Arjuna immediately pulls out his sword and starts running after Yudhishthira. Krishna is also there. Krishna stops him and says, "What are you doing?" He says, "I had actually taken a vow a long time ago." Arjuna says that whoever asks me to put down my Gandiva bow, I will kill that person. So he starts running after Yudhishthira like that, and then Krishna stops him. And then he says that, "You see, you are a slave to your vow that you made in the past without even thinking about the consequences." And then he says that there are actually certain circumstances in which not fulfilling your previously held pledge, and for our circumstances, let us not see it in terms of any pledge, right? It says his ego which is hurt. So there are circumstances when you should forgive that. You should not go after the satisfaction of your ego in order to score some small points. And he intervenes in that conflict and then narrates a few stories to Arjuna, saying there are certain situations in which not fulfilling your vow is actually the way of dharma. So the famous story there is of a muni, a sage called Kaushika. I think his name was Kaushika. So the story is that Kaushika Muni was a very righteous dharmic person in his life, and he had taken a vow to always tell the truth. he can never deviate from that, right? So once he was meditating in his hermitage in the forest, he saw a group of people running in front of him. And the group of people, before he could say anything, they said that we are running because we are being chased by some murderers or robbers, and we would like to hide in your hermitage. Can you give us some shelter? He said, yeah, you can hide here. So they hid there. But when the robbers come, do not tell them that we are hiding here, of course. So they are hiding in the hermitage. The robbers come, they ask the sage. The sage is then duty bound because he has taken a pledge. He shows them where the people are hiding. So then what happens is that they lose all their possessions and then they are killed. So this is the story. After death, Kushagra Muni goes to Yamaraja, and Yamaraj says that you go to hell. So he then counters saying that throughout my life I have never told a lie, I have always followed dharma. So what is this injustice that you are giving me? If there's anyone who deserves heaven, it is me. He says, you have only followed a portion of dharma, and in fact, he says you are alpashruta, essentially unsophisticated. Your understanding of dharma is unsophisticated. You think that just by following a pledge that you have made in the past, you are following dharma, but that is not the case. In fact, in this case, because by doing a little adharma, you could have saved the lives of these people and been a cause towards a greater good, a greater dharma. And therefore, in that case, not only you did a heinous act by telling them the whereabouts of the hiding people, but also you have violated in spirit your pledge. And here there is a very interesting verse I will narrate here, which is often quoted as the definition of dharma, right? Have we heard? Does anyone know that famous verse that we quote for defining dharma? That's there, but that's not the definition. No. So this famous verse is often quoted, and it's actually spoken by Krishna in the Mahabharata. He says, "Dharana dharma vityahu dharmo dharayate praja." Dharma is known for its quality of upholding. Upholding means supporting, nourishing, right? Whatever upholds or protects or supports people is dharma. And whatever is contrary to that is adharma. So in this case, if you apply this definition, in the case of Kushagra Muni, the right course of action, the dharmic course of action, is to tell a lie, right? And then Krishna then gives out a few circumstances in which you could actually tell a lie. He says, "Pranat te vivahe va sarvatyagi vadhate narmanya vipravitte va nacha proktam vrishabhate." He says, when you are about to lose your life, right? When you are entering into a marriage, so while you are in a wedding party, if you joke around, that is acceptable. When you are about to encounter the destruction of your entire clan, right? And when you are just having a light moment with your friends, speaking a lie is not regarded as telling a lie. Adharmam natra pashyanti dharma tattvartha darshina. The knowers of dharma do not see adharma in this case, right? And then he tells the story. But then Arjuna says, okay, all that is fine. I accept what you are telling me, but I still need to fulfill my vow. I need to kill Yudhishthira. So then tell me a way out. So, and this actually is also used in the Ramayana in one occasion. I'll come to that. So Krishna says, actually, for people who are who have a great stature, who have been honored throughout their life, if you insult them, that is equal to killing them, right? So he says, "Yada manam lavate mananarha, tada savai jivati jiva loke, yada manam lavate mahantam, tada jivan mrita ityuche." Tada jivan mrita ityuchate. Says, once such a person, such an honorable person is subjected to a great insult, he is regarded as dead in the eyes of people. And therefore, Krishna then advised Arjuna that throughout your life you have addressed your elder brother as Atra Bhavan. Atra Bhavan is the address of an honorable person, like Your Highness or I don't know, Your Majesty, something like that. Instead of that, for the first time in your life, you address Yudhishthira as Tvam, Tu, Tum, right? You, and through that you can satisfy your vow. So he does that. Arjuna does that, and that is a very big thing for him because throughout his life he has always respected his elder brother. After doing that, he is again guilt-ridden because then Arjuna says, "Oh, I've insulted my elder brother. Now I have committed a heinous crime. I should go and commit suicide now because there is no other prayashchitta for this act." And then Krishna again stops him. He says that, "Oh, you do not know. You have still not grasped what dharma is." He says, "Sukshmo dharmo durvidaschapi partha visheshatokye prochyamanam nibodha hatvatmanam atmana prapnuyastam vadat bhratur narakam chadi." He says, "Sukshmo dharma." The ways of dharma is very sukshma. It's very subtle, and therefore you should try to understand it in a sequential format, right? Visheshatokye prochyamanam. As I'm telling you, try to understand it. Hatvatmanam atmana prapnuyastam. If you kill yourself by yourself, commit suicide, then you will attain a state which is even more reprehensible than killing your brother. So it implies that atmahatya or suicide is a mahapatra. It's worse than killing your clansman. It's worse than killing even your elder brother. And therefore you should not do that. And then he says, actually there is a corollary to what I told you earlier. So for a great person, for an honorable person, if you insult him, it's equivalent to killing them. Similarly, for a very righteous person or an upright person, praising yourself is equivalent to killing yourself. So if you engage in self-praise, that's the same as killing yourself. So he says that now you should praise yourself, and that will amount to your prayashchitta of killing yourself. So he does that, and then ultimately we all see the futility of these types of silly vows that people have taken, and then Arjuna proceeds to the battlefield with the blessing of Yudhishthira. Okay. So this is one of the key critical chapters here. I think I have 5 more minutes, right? I will cover one more story and then we can take some questions. So one story that I can quickly cover is this story of post-war, as I was mentioning. So after the war is over, Yudhishthira, as I mentioned, is wrecked with guilt, and he doesn't want to govern the kingdom, doesn't want to do anything with the kingdom. In fact, wants to leave and take sannyasa in the forest. And this is where Kama Gita is recited. Let me just go through that. Yeah. So this is the chapter number 10, Vijayi Prabodha, inspiring the victor. Usually the victor in a battlefield does not need any further inspiration. He's already succeeded, he's already prevailed, right? And then he will go and take over the reins. But in this case, because he's the Dharmaraja, he needs further guidance, further inspiration. So in this case, Krishna then gives him that guidance. And the famous verse here is, Yatra naiva share karyam na vrittir na cha bandhubhi atmanaikaina yodhavyam tatte yuddham upastitam. Yudhishthira, you have fought one battle. In that battle, you had use of weapons, you had use of your commanders, your relatives, your warriors. But now you have to fight another battle in which there is no use of all these instruments. You have to fight it alone, and that war has now arrived for you. So tatte yuddham upastitam. That is the battle that you have to fight. And he says, Tasmin nirjite yuddhe kamavastham gamishyasi etat gyatva kvanteya pradikrityo bhavishyasi. If you had failed on the battlefield of Kuruskshetra, nothing worse would have happened to you, right? You would have gone, you would have performed your Kshatriya Dharma, and you have attained the Virgati. That is also an honorable thing, right? But tasmin nirjite yuddhe kamavastham gamishyasi. If you do not succeed in this battle that you have to fight inside your heart, I do not know what state you shall achieve. So that is his warning from Krishna, and then he delivers the sermon known as Kam Gita. So he says, Nabhayam dravyamutfrijya siddhir bhavati bharata shariram dravyamutfrijya siddhir bhavati manava. One does not attain siddhi or fulfillment by simply renouncing external objects, right? Because, and the reason is, Praya dravya vimuktasya sharireshu cha gridhyata yo dharmo yat sukham chaiva vishakamastu tattata. It is once you have renounced all external objects, if you still continue to hanker after them in your mind, that defeats the entire purpose. Simply by running to the forest, if you cannot give up your attachment to your relatives, to your kingdom, to your material possessions, that will not solve any purpose. And the Kama Gita, in which Kamadeva himself recites a few verses, I will just go through one or two of them. For example, he says, Kama says to a seeker after spiritual realization, he says, Yo mam prayatate hantum gyatva praharane balam tasya tasmin praharane punah pradur bhavapya. He says, if someone tries to destroy me using a particular instrument, I manifest myself in that instrument itself, and therefore you cannot destroy it, because I am the instrument and I am the object of destruction. And then he says, Yo mam prayatate hantum yagye vivid dakshinai jangameshva dharmatma punah pradurpavapya. If you try to destroy karma by performing great charities, by giving all kinds of donations, I will manifest myself in your ego associated with giving charity, and then you will not be able to see me. In fact, he then goes on, and there's one famous verse here which I will recite in the end. So charity, knowledge, all these are different meanings that people seek. Lastly, people try to go after moksha, right? So mumuksha, the desire to seek liberation. Kama says there as well, Yo mam prayatate hantum mokshamasthaya panditah tasya moksharatistasya nrityami cha hasam cha. He says, if someone tries to destroy me by becoming established in moksha, by going after moksha, I dance and laugh in front of that person. Nityami cha hasami cha, because he does not know that mumuksha, or the desire for moksha, is also a form of desire. And therefore, he says, Avadhya sarva bhutana mahameka sanatana. Therefore, I alone am indestructible among all people. And thereafter, Krishna then concludes his advice by saying that you cannot kill karma inside you through all these different instruments. The only way to do something about it is to channelize it in a way which is beneficial to you, beneficial to everyone. And therefore, he says you must take upon this duty of governing your kingdom, and through that you can attain fulfillment, as he also advises in the Bhagavad Gita, Karmane ve samsiddhyam asita janakadaya. Great kings like Janaka, etc., have attained fulfillment through karma itself. So I will just stop here. That is the last, that's the 10th chapter of this book, in which he inspires Yudhishthira, and at this point I can pause and take
So I had a question, going back to when you were talking about lunch, and you said there were two situations. One was when you're in great trouble, and the one when you feel really affectionate. So I get the affection, but why in great trouble or peril should you have lunch?
Because if you have no other means of food, right? If you are so hungry that you have to accept food from whatever source is given to you, then that is the other option that is the other situation in which you should accept the invitation to lunch or the invitation to food. That's his reasoning there. Either you go for affection or you go because you have a crisis.
Being dead is not good.
We have one or two more pop questions left, I think. Let's quickly finish that.
The one thing I've realized that Kushagra is that, a lot of those niti are also available as log niti.
Yeah.
But we don't know the source necessarily. That is a truth has come from Shastra or
Yes.
this or that. But those are all known, right? In public domain.
Yes. Yes. For example, this whole thing about telling a lie to save the lives of others or doing something wrong for a greater good, I think that comes to us through intuition as well. But it is interesting to see that people have applied in different situations, and it also comes from the Shastra. There are a couple of more interesting questions in the pop quiz. We can just finish that. So, how many male characters in the Mahabharata were called Krishna? It's more than one, I can tell. Okay, let's see the results. Okay, not bad. 2 and 3 are the most popular here. Actually, the number to my knowledge is 3 because Shri Krishna is one of them. The second one is Arjuna, as you know. One of the names of Arjuna, actually the name given to him by Pandu himself, his father is Krishna. So that's his the second person. And third one is does someone know? Draupadi is Krishna, that's why I said male Krishna. There is one more person. Yes. Yes. Krishna Dvaipayana is his name. The name of Veda Vyas, actually the word Vyas is his upadhi. Because he divided the Vedas into 4, he got this name Vyas. His actual name was Krishna. And he was called Dvaipayana because he was born on island. Okay? Next one. Yeah, okay. So in the last chapter of the Mahabharata, people look back and then they figure out everyone is an incarnation of something, of someone. Who is Draupadi revealed to be an incarnation of?
Yogamaya.
Yogamaya is the sister of Krishna. Could be, I don't know. I knew that people will say Durga or Shanti, but that is actually not correct. Draupadi is revealed to be the incarnation of Lakshmi. Shri Resha Draupadi Nama Tvadarthyam Manusham Gata. The reason being that she is the primary wife of Arjuna. And Arjuna is a part of Nar Narayan. So there are 2 forms of Vishnu, Nar and Narayan. Arjuna is Nar and Narayan is Shri Krishna. And therefore she is the primary wife of Arjuna, and therefore she's Lakshmi. And then the verse says Shri Resha Draupadi Nama Tvadartham Manusham Gata. Okay, this one is actually a myth buster. So let's see if people can answer it. According to the Phalashruti of the Mahabharata, there's even after the last chapter, there's another chapter called Mahabharata Mahatmya, in which all the results from reading or reciting the Mahabharata are mentioned. So according to the Phalashruti of the Mahabharata, what is the main consequence of keeping a copy of the Mahabharata at home? It's family conflict, prosperity, victory, or attainment of a kingdom. Okay, done. actually a great myth. There is nowhere written, at least I have not found anywhere in reading the Mahabharata, that if you keep a copy of the Mahabharata at home, you will have family conflict or kalaha. Actually, the verse says, Bharatam bhavane yasya tasya hastagato jayah. If you have a copy of the Mahabharata at home and you read it, I mean, the implication is that you read it and try to live by its principles, then hastagato jaya, jaya will be in your hands, victory will be yours. So that's why I always tell, keep the Mahabharata at home if you have to, and no need to fear any bad consequences. I think there's one last one. No? So Vanu, the bonus question. Yeah, so far throughout this talk, we have spoken about different characters. Do we have a place where we can put in the previous comments? Okay, so we will just shout about that. Who are all the recipients of Krishna Niti in the Mahabharata?
Sanjaya.
Sanjaya. Who else?
Barbaric.
But that is not in the Mahabharata. That's folk tale.
Yudhishthira.
Yudhishthira.
Arjuna.
Duryodhana, main one, because he gets all the instructions as the Shanti Duta. And besides that, you can say Bhima is also a recipient, because Bhima is the one who is advised to kill Jarasandha by that verse that I narrated. Then, interestingly, two other people which I did not cover in this talk, Dhritarashtra and Gandhari. These are also the people who receive this. Dhritarashtra while in the assembly as well, but even after the conclusion of the war, Krishna is the first one who is dispatched to go and make peace with Dhritarashtra and Gandhari, and he's the one who tries to calm them down, and in that process also takes over this sharp of Gandhari that the entire clan of the Yadavas destroyed. But just see how much sacrifice Krishna is willing to take upon himself to shield the Pandavas. If the Pandavas had gone first, maybe they would have received some kind of sharp from Gandhari. So that is another thing that Krishna does to help his friends. Okay, so that is all I had for today. Thank you so much.
A big round of applause to Aniket, Kushagra Aniket ji for making our evening a memorable and enlightening experience. So thank you all of you two for being with us today. So for those who don't know us, myself Rohit and this is Viruta. So we are leading Hindu in IIT with some of our team members here in audience. So I would also like to thank Avatans ji and Nissan ji from Indica for making this event possible. Thank you. I would also like to take this opportunity to introduce Kiran Gajendra. He is a big support and esteemed alumni of IIT. So without his support, this event wouldn't have been possible. So big round of applause. So we have QR code. QR code of our. So we'll be sharing our QR code of our WhatsApp group. So feel free to join. So stay updated regarding our future events and activities. I've shared it in. Maybe we'll share that later. So we have go to snack box. So don't forget to collect your snack box. And we have we had this space till 6:30. So we are already out of the time. So we'll move on. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
So we'll meet in the next event. So if you have 1 minute, we want to show you one video. It's a national summit of Hindu Yuva which happened here in Chicago last year.
Thank you.